Mountain. If you're a skier, snowboarder, or winter enthusiast, enter to win a 5-day punch pass by texting the word powder to 31996 today. You could be the lucky winner and be able to receive powder alerts. Text the word powder to 31996. The big opening day will happen soon. Plus Trail Powder Mountain. It's what winter's all about.
Guys, you're not alone. Half of all men have erectile dysfunction. Don't wait for a little blue pill to kick in. Get your sex life back with Gainswave Therapy at New Health, Montana. Gainswave is a safe, 20-minute medical treatment that breaks up blockages and repairs blood. Gainswave is simple, non-invasive, and available at New Health, Montana here in Missoula. For a limited time, you can receive 2 treatments free as part of our pilot program. Visit newhealthmontana.com.
Zero emissions and hit the road small. Thanks to grant funding possible by riders and zero fare partners. We're more efficient than ever here at Mountain where zero fare means cleaner air. Thanks to Southgate Mall and the Trail 103.3 for investing in our community as zero fare partners.
Winter weather is here and the temperature is plummeting. The cold weather gear experts at Bob Ward's recommend layering up before heading out. The latest base layers from Smartwool, Hot Chilies, and Under Armour form an insulating starting layer top and bottom. Midweight fleece pullovers and full zip from Mountain Hardwear, Cool, and Nike add a buffer for extra warmth. Finally, weatherproof insulated jackets from the North Face, Columbia, and Marmot protect you from the snow and cold. Finish gearing up for the adventure with gloves and beanies from Oakley, Turtle Fur, and Dakine. Bob Ward Sports and Outdoors. Winter weather ready since 1917.
Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, collaboration with Proxy Theater, invite you to World View, Cultures on Display, a series of films with highlights and celebrates the unifying power of the visual arts. The fourth and final film in the series, Sit Through the Gift Shop, chronicles art by the shadowy British graffiti street artist Nancy, who has literally left his mark on cities throughout the world. This screening will be free, open to the public Monday, December 9th, 7 p.m.
Americans waste 3.8 billion single, going for more than 10 decades with more fuel, using more emissions. The next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, getting coffee, or picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
Hey there, Missoula. Mark Moss inviting you to join us for an evening of live storytelling for Wilma December 20th. Each storyteller takes the stage to share their true personal stories and memories on the theme of the day. We again welcome American Students who will sign up for our Missoula team. Get your tickets now. Approximately Fort Lauderdale December 10th, 7 p.m. at Wilma.
Radio for Western Montana. Across the state on SWX Television.
I like football.
The 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tootell. Coulter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. Montana, Missoula, Montana State, Albany. Some basketball and some high school and we'll mix it all up and have a great day. It is Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Outstanding to be with you on this Tuesday afternoon and evening. Hope you are having a wonderful day. Thanks for letting us spend some of it with you. We appreciate that. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. And this Saturday, December 7th, it's their 7th annual snow day. One day only, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you're going to the game in Missoula, they're even a little bit earlier. They'll probably let you in. Kurtz Polaris snow day, one day only this Saturday. If you'd like to call us, you're welcome to do just that. 329-1899, 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rankish Brothers RV phone line. And if you would like to listen live, perhaps it behooves you, to avoid the boss and whatnot, or maybe it's just easier on your phone, your computer. Go to the website, 1029ESPN.com. There you can listen live on the Listen Live tab. The stream is there. It is brought to us by Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. We are once again going to continue to delve in. Yesterday we spent quite a lot of time talking about the Cats and the Grizz and their matchups, but more retrospectively kind of getting through the last week, the bye week, and getting ready. Today we're going to spend some time actually talking about Southeastern Louisiana and Albany, a couple of teams that are coming to the state of Montana for the first time, and what these matchups look like, some players to look at, and what they do well, try and get you acquainted a little bit, at least, with the opponents of the Cats and the Grizz this coming Saturday. And I want to let you know we will have coaches and players from both of these teams throughout the course of the week on this show as well. In fact, we will have Jeff Undercuffler, an outstanding freshman quarterback for Albany, on with us here this week in an interview as well. So we got plenty coming to you on these games. We also very happy today to have our Mattress Firm Student of the Week. Last week we were off on Friday because it was, Thanksgiving weekend, so we had to go do that. So we got the Student of the Week this week early, and then we'll do another one on Friday. But happy to have Caroline Bullock. Yes, that name may be familiar. The daughter of the governor on with us today. So we're happy to have her. She's a senior at Helena High, outstanding athlete there at Helena High School, and also helping out the kids with some math, the elementary school levels, and also her future very nomadic, which makes me happy. I think she doesn't exactly know where she's going to go, and I relate. So we will go into that with her. Happy to have her on with us as well. And then we also got to get into some basketball stuff. We're about 6, 7, 8 games into the season for men's and women's basketball in the Big Sky Conference. So we will see where we're at, give a little update here as we're kind of winding down non-conference play already. So there you go. There is the show Outlook. It is brought to us by Shine Auto Detailing, online at shineautodetailing.net. Go. Make an appointment right now. Get your car cleaned and protected today. Shine Auto Detailing. Hi, Coulter. How we doing over there?
Good. Thanks for making the coffee.
It's a pleasure. I have it right here in my Beatles cup. I say mine. It's not mine. It's the office's. It's a group of different mugs that we have. And I know you're not a Beatles guy, but is it okay if I drink out of a Beatles mug?
Certainly. That's one of the great coffee cups there is. I mean, drinking coffee out of a cup that says "A Hard Day's Night" is. It's not as if the Beatles lines aren't iconic. I mean, that's a great line. "A Hard Day's Night." I just wish it wasn't sung in such a poppy tone. David hasn't been in on this yet, so let's not expose him to this.
No. We don't need Beatles. Shout out.
Just what they need. They only sold 500 million records.
No.
Oh, see, now David's my new favorite producer.
He's down on the Beatles.
Oh, man. David, I'm buying you a beer after this.
Listen. This is nothing but revelations of. That's all. That's nothing to do with.
Yeah, you're right. I'm so young, and I have such young taste. That
you are young. You are young. Yes. Now, I never know whether when David talks to, if it's everybody can hear him or if only we can hear him. But he's 100% right. You would be eating dinner if we weren't on the show right now. First dinner.
Followed by second.
Wake up at 3 a.m. Get the special at Denny's. Do the thing. You're an old man.
Let's talk about some football teams from 2,500 miles away. I got to say, I love this time of year because I love the Big Sky Conference. Obviously, I've dedicated basically my whole life to it.
Yes.
But it's
a young life.
It's a mean, I know all the teams so well and the ins and outs, and when something new happens, it's not this intensive learning experience. Like when any coach when Cal Poly gets a new coach, okay, that's just added to previous history that I already know about Cal, et cetera, Northern Colorado, et cetera. But I have never written words about Southeastern Louisiana or Albany at all.
Yeah.
And I find it very fun. I mean, it takes a long time. It took me 6 hours to write my Albany first look story. It's not like when you're doing the Sac State first look, you know exactly where Sacramento's at. Oh, what's their enrollment at now? Bam. Okay, who's their good players? You already know Kevin Thompson, Elijah Dotson, on down the line. It's fun learning about not only the teams, but the schools and stuff too. One thing I think is interesting is like the university system. I know we're going to get into the Cats versus Albany in the second hour, but learning about the different university systems in the different states is very fascinating. We know out west, we know about the Cal State and the UC systems in California. And then we know sort of the more rural western states have the land grant institutions like Montana State and the quote-unquote flagship universities like Montana. And most of the rural states have those sorts of deals. But then like the SUNY system, which is the New York university system, is very fascinating. There's campuses all over them.
Yeah, like, I mean, Wisconsin, for instance, it's all
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin Whitewater, Wisconsin Green Bay, Wisconsin Madison. They just sort of dropped that off of there. But it's interesting, too, how names evolve. We just call it Sacramento State or Sac State. But actually, it's California State University at Sacramento is the actual name of the school. Like if you were to go by the academic abbreviation, it's CSUS, not Sac State. Right.
It's just interesting how all this stuff evolved.
You see that Andy Katz predicted Sac State being the Big Sky representative in the NCAA tournament?
Well, they're undefeated, right?
They had 4-1.
Did they just lose their first game?
They just lost. They won their first 4.
I know that
it's Fullerton and Riverside.
Ken Palm was like the analytics guy for college basketball. Ken Pomeroy. He always has his countdown of undefeated teams. He'll say, like every night he has a tweet that goes out and he'll say 21 undefeated teams left. Sorry. In this, for example, Sac State.
Right.
Sorry, Sac State, because this is the last one that's lost. But I knew that there was a moment where I think there's like 6 undefeated teams left, which is crazy since we're only 8 games in.
Everybody is losing in college basketball.
But that's kind of what the state of college basketball is, right?
Yeah. Sac State lost to Cal Poly.
Interesting. Which is a non-conference game in basketball.
Right. Exactly. Okay, Coulter, let's get into this. Southeastern Louisiana is...
I also want to talk about this, too. Okay. The abbreviation for Southeastern Louisiana, I had always seen it as SELA. When they played on ESPN in the quarterfinals 2 years, or I guess it was 4 years ago, 2014, they made it to the quarters, and it was SELA as well. But then in Frank Selfo's press conference yesterday, he was wearing a sweatshirt that said SLU. So I'm accustomed to calling them SELA, not as if we've become accustomed to talking about the Southeastern Louisiana Lions. But if we do say SELA, if there's anybody out there that thinks that that's incorrect, send us an email or something.
Well, primarily, there's going to be 4 teams that we'll be talking about, and whether it's SELA or SLU, we won't be confusing them with any of them.
Totally. David says that it's SLU, so that's interesting. Right. Let's call them Southeastern Louisiana.
By the way,
there was a couple of times in the press conference, though, where they were called Southeast Louisiana. Even Bobby Houck accidentally called them Southeast Louisiana. Southeastern Louisiana.
Yeah. By the way, no surprise here, less than 10 minutes in the show, you've already made it. Sac State did not lose Cal Poly. They lost to Colorado. That was their first. World-changing news for people.
Indeed.
Coulter, Southeastern Louisiana is in the second round of the playoffs. Let's hear from Bobby Houck. You asked a good question, and I think this will help people because it is. You're trying to familiarize yourself. By the way, quick plug for you, but you write the first look stories all the time for whatever the teams at Montana State are playing that week. But at this point in the conference season, you go, okay, I'm familiar maybe if you follow the conference with all those goes. It's a great article. But now, especially, go to SkylineSportsMT.com and read these things because it will be so helpful, so much more interesting when you know the players, what they're about, who they are, and all of that. And you can do that now. But you asked, for the sake of helping everybody out, who is the comp to Bobby Houck that SELA, SLU, has in the Big Sky Conference? What team do they most resemble? Here's what he said.
Probably Sac State would be the closest, both in terms of style and personnel. They're good up front and they're really skilled. So Sac would be the one I think would be the best comparison.
Of course, he means California State at Sacramento. But yeah, here's what I think. There is some legitimacy to that. They certainly aren't Cal Poly, okay? But also, I think to compare them to one of the teams that you lost to try and, I don't know, generate a little bit of that. I mean, you shouldn't have to, quote unquote, get up for a playoff game, but also it's so interesting. The breadth of even playoff teams can be so great because of automatic bids and things like that, which, by the way, Southeastern Louisiana is not an automatic bid. They are an earned bid. And so this is a team that is a very, very good football team. But also, you know, if you're not in the Big Sky or you're not in the Missouri Valley or maybe, you know, a couple others, and also just the lack of familiarity, sometimes it's hard to sit here and go, okay, this is going to be a really good football team. You know, you look at Albany. Oh, the 1,600 fans came to their playoff game. Like, what are they? They just won their first ever playoff game. What are they really? It's a really good football team. Albany is a really good football team, Southeastern Louisiana. But I don't think that this is incorrect in what I watched, at least on Saturday, and watching the way that they play the game, comparing them to Sacramento State. But I also think there's a little bit of, you know, if I can compare them to a really good football team, it's an added element of legitimacy, you know, within the psyche to some extent. But nonetheless, is a team that throws the ball all over the place. We'll hear in about a half an hour or so from Bobby Houck talking about Chase and Virgil, their quarterback. In fact, they do really two quarterbacks, but one primary as a thrower. Unbelievable athlete and also a great quarterback as well. And Frank Aselfo, as he talked to us, and he'll be on the show with us again later in the week, said that Virgil probably played his best half of football in the second half of their playoff game. Well, if you ever wanted a guy to peak and play his best football at the right time, that's it, you know, in a game that you end up winning by 1 point. But what do you think, Coulter? Do you think, as you've watched this team play, Sacramento State is a reasonable comp, which I think that it is?
Here's what I'd say about both Albany and Southeastern Louisiana is that their skill players, especially their starting star skill players, would absolutely be amongst the best in the Big Sky. We're going to hear from Jeff Choate in the second hour about Juwan Green. Jeff Choate thinks he's an NFL guy. Jeff Undercluffer, the quarterback, said he said he ran a sub 4.4 in the spring. I mean, if you're 6'1", 190, you run sub 4.4, you are an NFL guy, especially when you have the production that Juwan Green has had. I think that Chase and Virgil is probably not quite as good a quarterback as Kevin Thompson, but he would be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Sky Conference. I think that, I mean, I was into an SWX tonight last night with Sean Rainey and the boys, and Sean and I were talking, and Sean, he's got a little bit of a different inside on the Grizz program because he gets to talk to some of the coaches and stuff off the record, and it's great to hear from him on some of the stuff that he's hearing. But he said that the coaches had mentioned to him and that Coach Houck had mentioned to him. This is one guy we didn't actually ask Bobby Houck about directly, so it's not as if Coach Houck was avoiding talking about him. We just didn't directly ask Bobby about him. But Devontae Williams, the running back, he's a transfer from Indiana, and this kid was first-team All-Big Ten freshman when he was a freshman. The Big Ten does an all-freshman team. He was first-team all-freshman at both running back and punt returner at Indiana. And I don't know what happened at Indiana. They had a coaching change recently, so maybe he just fell out of favor with the new staff. Coach Selfo told us, you know, they have 20 transfers on their team, and he said, we really researched the backstories of these guys. If they're leaving because they're malcontent or because they were in trouble, not happening. If they're leaving because it wasn't a right fit or their academics aren't going well or it's a coaching change, we'll take a look. And I mean, you mentioned the two-quarterback system. I mean, they have a drop-down quarterback from Arkansas. They have a drop-down quarterback from LSU. They have a drop-down quarterback from Alabama. And this is like SEC light here. So in terms of the valuation, the skill players from both of these schools that are coming to Montana are going to be on par. I mean, I think that Juwan Green would be one of the best receivers in the Big Sky Conference, the kid from Albany. I think Jeff Undercluffer, 39 touchdowns doesn't lie. No matter what level you're at. You throw 39 touchdowns in a college football season and you're a freshman, you can play. I mean, you are going to be able to play at most of the schools in the FCS. And as far as this Southeastern Louisiana team, Devontae Williams certainly would be an all Big Sky type talent. I think Jason Virgil, the quarterback, would certainly be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Sky. This team is going to have a lot of speed and a lot of athleticism. It's the two things that set the Big Sky apart from the Southland and set the Big Sky, quite frankly, apart from anyone. It's just a microcosm of what exists out west. There's just great coaches, great recruits. Everything trickles downhill because there's just not that many options. Jeff Choate said it in his press conference last week. He said, the reason I think the Big Sky has gotten so good is you got 7 former FBS coordinators or coaches, head coaches. I mean, you have 3 guys in the league that were FBS head coaches, if you count Paul Petrino at Idaho. And then you have 4 other guys who were coordinators at the Power 5 level. And if you want to stay out west, if you don't get the 1 or 2 Mountain West jobs that come open every year, you're going to land in the Big Sky. And then that helps the recruiting trickle downhill as well. This team, Southeast Louisiana, has a lot of drop downs, but they also, they're not going to have the absolute outstanding players like the Dante Olson or the George Obinas, the guys that have been developed, that were diamond in the rough type guys, or maybe just straight up overlooked. They're not going to have that. And the other difference is, like, Southeastern Louisiana is going to have as good a speed as Montana's seen this entire year. They're not going to have an offensive line like Weber State or Sac State or Montana State or North Dakota. They just don't have the lines like the teams in the Big Sky.
Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. A couple things for you from the Southeastern Louisiana team. The 8-4 on the season. They lost at Ole Miss 40-29. I mean, they lost by 11 points on the road at an SEC school. They beat Jacksonville State in the first game of the season when Jacksonville State was ranked number 6 in the nation, a team, by the way, of course, that beat Eastern Washington a couple weeks later. And they also, on November 9th, beat down the then 6th-ranked team in the nation, Central Arkansas, who, oh, by the way, got the 8th seed in these FCS playoffs. So they absolutely hammered 34-0 in that football game. Their losses, they lost at McNeese State and at UIW, 2 Southland Conference games, by 4 and by 6, respectively. And then they also lost the last game of the regular season to Nichols, a game that was for the conference championship, essentially, and for the automatic bid, 28-27. 1-point game to Nichols, who, again, had their way in the first round of the playoffs against North Dakota. Okay, so this is, I mean, it's all about matchups. We understand that. You can play a team and beat them, and then play another team, who lost to that team, and they can beat you. We get all of that. But when you talk about wins against really good teams and definitive wins, and, if you're going to have a couple of losses in there, 9-4 team or an 8-4 team, the losses that they have are not crazy. They're not, and they haven't been blown out. The most they've lost by is 11 points at Ole Miss. I mean, this is a really good football team. The other thing too, it's a really well coached football team. One thing I like for these programs that maybe don't have the history that a lot of them do is a guy like Frank Selfo, who was a high school coach in the 80s, a head coach, and has been basically a coordinator or quarterbacks coach all over the place, from Tulane to Jacksonville in the NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and bounced around a bunch of different places, but is a football lifer. And then later in life, in his 60s or whatever it is, decides he wants to go home. He's from Louisiana originally, obviously Tulane and New Orleans, but from Louisiana originally, and wants to be the head coach now, and has been the coordinator, the coach, the helper all the way through, and now has taken over a program and is excited. And there's a level of enthusiasm, I think, that a guy like that brings to a program, but also just the football knowledge that he carries with him that I think is able to build up a program. A lot of times, an FCS job like this might be your first ever head coaching job as a young coach or something like that that's coming up on their way up. Whereas when it's a place that you just choose because you want to be there, you want to be home, and you're still excited about what you're doing, and there is a certain novelty of it, of being the head coach there. He's got this thing rolling, and a guy who has been the quarterbacks coach of Nick Foles, of Blake Bortles at Tulane, of 4 different, I think, NFL drafted quarterbacks that came through Tulane University of all places while he was there in from 99 through I think 06 or something like that. impressive. I mean, his resume is really good, and Bobby Houck said it in the press conference that, hey, this is a guy, this is a family that's a football family. They've seen a ton of football. They know what the heck they're doing, and clearly that's true.
Tulane wasn't really a reputable football program until the Selfo brothers got there. Chris Selfo was the head coach, and Frank Selfo was the offensive coordinator from 1998 until 2006. But during that time, they had a lot of good players. They had a whole bunch of guys that, if you analyze them from the NFL perspective, are considered either flops or just mediocre guys like Sean King and Patrick Ramsey and J.P. Lossman. But that's here nor there. They were first-round draft picks out of Tulane, which that's not happening before or after.
When Sean King got his shot, I think in Tampa, for about a year, people were like, what is going on? It was the Sean King show down there for a little while. And, it was a bit of a flash in the pan or whatever. But also, people are going, this kid out of Tulane, where the heck did he come from? Well, this is where he came from.
But he was a first-round pick, though. So, I mean.
Was he a first-round pick?
I think he was a first-round pick.
Okay.
Regardless, these guys know how to coach quarterbacks. The other thing that's why I think that researching these sorts of schools and football programs are so interesting, because you think Hammond, Louisiana. Hammond, Louisiana is 45 miles from Baton Rouge and 60 miles from New Orleans. So it's dead in the middle of Baton Rouge and New Orleans. One of the richest recruiting grounds in the entire country. I mean, you have so much talent down there. And like I said on the show yesterday, you're in a location where you can get guys, if it's not going their way, like Georgia or Alabama, or Arkansas, or LSU, or even the Louisiana Techs and Arkansas States of the world, to come your way as transfer. So I was looking, so why has it taken SLU so much time to build? Well, it's because there was no time spent building. They cut football back in 1985, and they didn't have it back fully. Cut football in 1986, and they did not have football back fully until 2005. And then they got it rolling a little bit with Ron Roberts, and they won their first ever Southland title in 2013. They won a playoff game. And then Ron Roberts jumped ship to go to Louisiana, University of Louisiana, as the defensive coordinator. And then they just have kind of been searching for the right guy. They hired internally. It didn't really work out. They weren't as good. And now it looks like, by all accounts, they got the right dude.
And this is interesting, too. Didn't you tell me this, that Southeastern Louisiana is the third biggest school by enrollment in the state of Louisiana?
15,000 students.
I mean, it's not like high school, obviously, where the population of your undergraduates comprise the pool of players that you're getting. Okay, I get that. But, it's with, we're trained, I think, in the sports world to think about school size based on the prestige or whatever of their sports programs and what they are. And then you find out, there's only 5,500, 6,000 students at Duke University?
Right.
Really? What's going on? Or Vanderbilt?
Sure.
But then other places, major institutions, Georgia State, 30,000 kids
maybe
or whatever
more like
it is.
50,000 now.
And
some of the commuter kids,
Southeastern Louisiana is a significant institution within the state of Louisiana, and has, I think, an opportunity in the way of, when you talk about boosters, when you talk about a fan base, when you talk about a student population, to sort of be a built-in group of attendees and things like that. There's a lot of possibility there for a team on the rise, and again, they're proving it this season, and you get the right guy at the helm, that it's a good football team. I haven't seen enough to sit here and start to talk about how they compare, how the matchups are going to look, and all that. We'll get into a little bit of that, especially with the quarterbacks that they have. But I think this is going to be a really fun game. Here's what I do like. They air it out, and they are fast, athletic, and all the things that are fun to see guys be. It's not quote unquote just, but you get a lot of these Northeast teams, and it's ground and pound. It's try and railroad guys, slow, grind it out types of football. That's not what Southeastern Louisiana is about. They're out there to put some points on the board and see what's going on, through the air as well. And that's that I think is going to make for at least a fun and entertaining game on Saturday.
Later on this hour, we'll tell you a little bit more. I think that there's such an interesting, when you watch teams on film, you're preparing for different teams. I think when you're preparing for teams from the South specifically, they're just going to have such good-looking athletes such long guys, fast guys. I think there's an opposite effect of that when you're talking about, like, when you're analyzing the Montana schools. And I want to get into it with you a little bit, just about maybe the element of underestimation. Because if you're watching, like, Josh Hill at Montana State or Jace Lewis at Montana, you're sitting there thinking, well, man, this guy's like a 6 foot, 205 pound middle linebacker. I'm good. We're going to run right over this guy. Right. And you're like, oh, ouch, no, we didn't.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because 6'5", 250 shows up on tape no matter what, or where you're from.
No doubt.
And 6'1", 205 doesn't look intimidating on tape. But then you play against Jace Lewis, and you're like, oh, man, this guy can smack me a little bit. So it's an interesting factor. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the South.
We'll take a break. We'll get back, as Coulter said, into a little bit more, especially the quarterback scenario with Southeastern Louisiana. And we will be getting into the Albany stuff and hear from Jeff Choate at the top of the next hour. But next, we're going to talk to Caroline Bullock. She is the Mattress Firm Student of the Week. She's a senior at Helena High School, and she is, yes, the daughter of Governor Steve Bullock, but also an outstanding three-sport athlete there at Helena High, and also helping out some of the younger kids with their math in her spare time as well. So we'll have her on right after this. Tootell and Nuanez, ESPN Radio.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, pump it up.
Joining your friends for a little get-together? Stop by your local Town Pump. Pick up a 12-pack of Bud, Miller, and Coors cans, 2 for $20, mix and match. While you're there, you may as well grab a bag of Ruffles Double XL chips, 2 for $6. Need it fast? Stop by Town Pump. There's one right down the road from you.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, yeah.
Whether you're traveling, Yellowstone guys, up in the Jaco and that's you. And we're a handshake.
It's a rite of passage at First Bank. Explore the great options for your young adult with a visit to Farmer State Bank, online at farmersebank.com or in person at any of our 9 locations in Western Montana. Our checking and savings accounts are designed to fit any lifestyle and budget with the flexibility, innovations, and security today's consumers demand. Start out right with Farmer State Bank, or Montana banks in 1907.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on it.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, online at MontanaAdvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula. Collaboration with Roxy Theater provide you with Worldview, Cultures on Display, a series of films which highlights and celebrates the unifying power of the visual arts. The fourth and final film in the series, Sit Through the Gift Shop, chronicles art by the infamous, shadowy British graffiti street artist Nancy, who has literally left his mark in cities throughout the world. This screening will be free, open to the public, under the simple time. 7 p.m.
Hey there, Coulter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Coulter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have 2-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Coulter Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. The Montana men's basketball team split a pair of games over the recent holiday weekend, winning against Copper State at home and losing at the Pit in New Mexico 2 days later. The Grizz won a pair of home games last week. 5 players scored in double figures, led by senior Saeed Pritchett with 19 points and a 74-62 win Monday over Texas Southern, Montana then made it 2 straight in Missoula thanks to a strong defensive effort and a 19.12 rebound double-double from Pridgett in a 69-62 win over Coppin State Friday. Freshman Derek Carter Hollinger had the first double-double of his career with 10 points and 10 rebounds.
Playing for the third time in 6 days, Montana struggled to stay out of foul trouble and to find efficiency in its offense in a 72-63 loss in front of 10,500 in Albuquerque, New Mexico on Sunday afternoon. Pridgett poured in 25 points to go with 10 rebounds. Freshman Josh Vasquez scored a career-high 16 points, but the Grizz fell to 3-5.
The Montana State men's basketball team won its first home game in more than 2 weeks, blasting Colorado Christian 82-46 last Tuesday, mostly for 2 weeks because they haven't been at home. But MSU fell 98-72 to a blazing Green Bay squad that shot nearly 62% from the floor. MSU is now 5-3 on the season.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Now, we weren't here Thursday, Friday last week, so we're getting to our Mattress Firm Student Athlete of the Week this week. Or today, from last week. How's that? There you go. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Outstanding to be with you on this Tuesday evening. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Go there this Saturday, December 7th. It's their 7th annual snow day. One day only, the biggest sale of the entire year. Huge savings, huge, off of everything. Go check it out this Saturday at Kurtz Polaris. If you'd like to follow us on the social medias, please feel free to do so. We are at Gus Tootell on Twitter, at Skyline Sports MT on Twitter, and on Twitter and Instagram. The station is available at 1029 ESPN. We go now to the Rangage Brothers RV phone line, and we welcome in a senior at Helena High School, our Mattress Firm Student of the Week, Caroline Bullock. Caroline, thank you so much for being with us. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, we're doing great. We're very happy to have you on. Congratulations on being the Student of the Week, and we got a bunch to talk about here. We know that you're playing sports there at Helena High School, but you're also working with the kids, teaching some math. Is that right? In like 4th grade classes? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I go over to school and I volunteer with a couple of 4th graders 3 times a week.
Now, how did you get involved in that? When you said, hey, you know what I need is more kids in my life. Let me go teach these kids how to do a little bit of arithmetic.
Well, I've always loved kids and I to give back to my community before I left for college. And the principal over at Bryant was a teacher of mine my freshman year, and I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I'd love to help out some kids and hang out with some kids. And he hooked me up with the classroom, and I love it.
Have you decided what you might want to go to school for?
I have no idea.
That a girl.
Maybe,
that's what
maybe
I'm talking
teaching,
about.
though, right? Maybe teaching is in your feet.
You know, maybe, but I don't think so.
Just volunteer in small doses. That's very good.
See, it's process of elimination is what it is. You do the stuff, you go, okay, that was good, but I don't know if that's for me, right? You got to keep, dipping your toes in the pool, find out what's going on. You think that you might want to go to college like next year? Do you want to take some time off? Do you have any idea what your plan is when you graduate here in like 6 months?
As of now, I'm to go to college out of state in either the East Coast or the West Coast, but I'm not really sure. And then maybe after college, gap year before grad school, if that's the thing. I have no idea.
I like it, Coulter. This is how I relate to Caroline very much on this. You know what I mean? When I was in high school, people asked me this. Don't just leave me alone with these questions. I don't know what in the world's going on. Hey, Caroline Bullock is our Mattress Firm Student of the Week from there at Helena High School. And Caroline, I know that you also are playing sports over there. You're into volleyball and basketball as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, basketball.
Oh, man, all 3. Okay, that's awesome. But volleyball in particular, I know that you're is something that you kind of got into a little bit later on, right? Like, what got you into volleyball?
Well, I ran cross country in middle school to get in shape for my basketball season. And as an 8th grader, I was making my schedule for high school. My dad, he goes, I'm so excited to watch you. When I was like, Dad, there's no way I'm he's like, well, you got to do a sport. And so I turned to my mom and I said, sign me up for the volleyball team because there's no way I'm cross country.
Now wait, why was there such an aversion to running?
It's awful. Have you ever
Gosh,
come
no,
on.
absolutely.
You're talking to the guy that has not run 3 consecutive miles in his lifetime. Of course, cross country is the worst. Good decision, Caroline. You made the right choice.
Thank you.
So then you got into you went to volleyball camp. You said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do."
Well, I went to volleyball. I was not great at all. And then, but like, I put in some work, and I worked over the summer with some of the coaches, and some tryouts. I was definitely the least prepared girl there, but I kind of brought the energy and excitement that I have. And at the end of the tryout, the coach pulled me aside and said, "Caroline, you made the team." And I think there was about 30 seconds of silence before I said, "Excuse me, you're kidding, right?" And, yeah, it was awesome.
That's great. Let's talk some hoops because Helena High, historic run. 3 state championships in a row. I think only the 3rd Class AA team ever on the girls' side win 3 consecutive AA state championships. So just being a part of that team, playing with some of the great players you've played with, what's that whole experience?
Oh, it's been so opportunity to have had that. Still be excited to play one more year and see what that looks like. I definitely still think our team has a mindset of continuing to make history, and I'm excited to go too.
You're on the radio in Missoula, so we got to ask you about Jamie Pickett. He was one of the most highly recruited players from the state of Montana the last handful of years, 2-time Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Montana, an outstanding player, and she's already getting playing time as a freshman for the Lady Grizz here. So what was that experience like playing with her, and what do you think of just her skill set as a player, what she brings to the college level?
Oh, Jamie's a phenomenal player, and more so than that, she's a phenomenal person. I've had her in quite a few of my classes. She's a great classmate, and battling against her every day in practice. Not only do I hope I make her a little bit better, but she's definitely a better player, a lot more physical and stronger than I once was. But having her friendship and relationship, she was definitely a big role model through high school, and that friendship and mentorship also really attributed to me becoming the person I am today.
Well, that's awesome. It's got to be fun for you then to have somebody playing at the college level and give you something to follow, right?
Yeah, definitely. I still definitely look up to her. I'm so excited for having a college level, and I can't wait to see what she continues to do.
Well, Caroline, that's great. We certainly appreciate you taking the time out here and being with us. We know you got a ton going on, and so we appreciate the time. One final thing, we got to ask you, but being the daughter of the governor, do you get to go into all the rooms in the Capitol? Like, are there places that we can't go, like for coffee in there, that you get to go sit down in? Is that great?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I definitely know where public information.
Hey, that's fantastic. Well, Caroline, we certainly appreciate you being with us. Have a wonderful day, and congratulations on being the Student of the Week, okay?
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being with us, Caroline Bullock, the Mattress Firm Student of the Week. If you have a student that you would like to nominate, you could go online right now to mattressfirmmt.com. You click on the Students tab there, and you can nominate anybody, any kid who's doing good things in their communities, in their schools, in their families, and so forth. Then they will be, if they're selected as the Student of the Week, they can be, first of all, on SWX, doing a feature there, and then on this show here. And then at the end of the year, there's going to be a vote, and they will select a Mattress Firm Student of the Year who's going to get a $3,000 scholarship. How about that to college, courtesy of Mattress Firm. Take a quick break. Appreciate that. On the other side, we'll get back into the Grizzlies versus Southeastern Louisiana, and particularly what's going on with the quarterback situation at Southeastern Louisiana. They got not one, but two. They're both pretty good. We'll tell you all about them right after this. Hey, December is winter prep month. The road salts and sands wreak havoc on the paint and finish of your ride. Protect your car or truck from the harsh winter elements by having a premium exterior detail, which includes a ceramic coating final finish. When spring comes around, simply drive through a car wash and it will look like it's been freshly waxed. If you care about your ride, protect it from the winter. This week only, save $50 off at Shine Auto Detailing. That's right, $50 off. Call to schedule. Just search Auto Detailing in Missoula and pick the one with over 100 5-star reviews. How about that? Okay, just Google it. It's that simple. Auto Detailing in Missoula. You can go online, shineautodetailing.net. Get your car detailed and protected today.
If you're looking for the perfect Christmas gift, think spicy. 'Tis the season for seasoning with gift packs from Alpine Touch. The 4-spice pack includes 4 Big Mountain flavors for just $19.99. Go to alpinetouch.com right now for gifts sure to keep mouths watering year-round. And if you plug in the code ESPN at checkout, you'll get a free bag of Alpine Touch sunflower seeds. From gift packs to gift cards to the Grand Slam package, Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Go to alpinetouch.com right now to order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes, shocks, wheels, and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing. 1950.
On Russell, across from the fairground.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
The biggest season in sports is shifting into overdrive, and the Desperado Sports Tavern has the fuel you need to make it to the finish line. By now, you've heard that the Despo serves the best wings around, but did you know they have a full menu with burgers, nachos, chicken strips, sandwiches, cheese sticks, and even steaks? Fill your tank, then wash it down with an ice-cold beverage or two. Keep your head in the game with 32 HD TVs and room for the whole crew. The Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of gas by idling every single day. Idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and restarting your
Vehicle exhaust contribute to smog, climate change, or air quality, making the risk of health as much fun. Kids and seniors are especially vulnerable to these health risks.
So next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, getting coffee, or picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
Brought to you by Missoula in Motion.
Hey there, Missoula. Mark Moss from Tell Us Something, inviting you to join us for an evening of live storytelling at the Wilma, December 10th at 7 p.m. 8 storytellers take the stage to share their true personal stories from memory on the theme, Tipping Point. We again welcome American Sign Language interpreters who will sign for our deaf friends in the Missoula community. Get your tickets now at the Top Hat Box Office, Rockin' Rudy's, or LogJamPresents.com. December 10th, 7 p.m. at the Wilma, Tipping Point Story. See you there.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
Who's pulling the trigger for the Lions on Saturday in Missoula? Well, more than one guy can tell you that, though centrally one guy. It is Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hi, how are you? Hope you're well. Thanks for being here with us, letting us be with you, however you want to talk about it. We're broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula this Saturday, one day only, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., even earlier than that if you need to get in on your way to the game, whatever it might be. The 7th annual snow day. You got to go. Biggest sale of the year, one day only at Kurtz Polaris. If you would like to, check us out on the podcast, you can feel free to do that. Tootell and Nuanez podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. It's there all the time, and it's there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Coulter, Southeastern Louisiana. We talked about him the first segment. We'll talk about him now. And we will get into the Montana State-Albany game in the next hour. But Jason Virgil's a transfer from Fresno State. Cole Kelly is their, quote, running quarterback. He is more of a lumbering quarterback, I would guess, at 7'12", 400 pounds.
6'7", 260.
I mean, that's real. 6'7", 260. That's a big dude. But he is a transfer from Arkansas. You talked about this before. 20 total transfers on this roster, 12 from Power 5 drop-down kids, including both of these quarterbacks. Well, I guess Fresno State, not a Power 5 school, a Mountain West school, but an FBS school nonetheless. But Jason Virgil, an outstanding quarterback. He's been a guy who's thrown for, a ton of yards. He is the Southland Conference Player of the Year, all-conference quarterback, the first team all-conference quarterback for the conference. And you asked Bobby Houck just about the style that Southland Conference football teams play in general, and it's more of an up-tempo, more of a passing game. Here's what he said about that, and this leads into the quarterback stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, everybody's running this stuff on offense, so it's not certainly exclusive to their conference. But, they're spreading it out. And they got a significant RPO game and a lot of zone. Quarterback's good. He can run it. He can throw it. So, I mean, it's a lot like a lot of the teams we see.
But they do. I mean, they run the RPO, but they got a guy who can do it and do it well in Jason Virgil.
Jason Virgil started 14 games at Fresno State. I don't know what happened there, but it seems like there's a common story amongst these FBS and Power 5 drop-down guys. They all seem to just have fallen out of favor where they were at and then kind of landed back on their feet. But, I mean, this kid threw for 2,800 yards and 19 touchdowns during his time at Fresno State, which Fresno State's no crazy power, but they're upper half Mountain West team. They were really competitive a couple years ago. Yeah. They've been good. They've produced good quarterbacks. I mean, Derek Carr went there. This kid, though, he's from Mesquite, Texas, which is a football hotbed. And he's done a really good job for them this year. And their ability to play two different quarterbacks at once, I think, has been key as well. I guess rotate them within the scope of the game. They don't play them both at the same time on the field. Only Montana State does. But which is not a shot to Montana State. I think they deserve a lot of credit for all the stuff that they've been able to get away with this year.
It's worked out pretty well.
But one of the craziest parts about the FCS level is just thinking about, this is why recruiting is such a crapshoot, and in some ways, to me, just so utterly ridiculous. Because what a guy is when he's 18 and what he's going to become when he's 23 has as much to do with mental development, maturation as a person, opportunity, luck, avoiding injury. If everybody that was a 5-star recruit when they were 18 years old just stayed the best, then we'd never have guys like J.J. Watt, who are 2-star recruits with one offer coming out of high school, who then are 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have guys like Mark Mariani and Chase Reynolds, who were sharing a scholarship back in 2005 at Montana, and then both got drafted into the NFL. You wouldn't have it if it wasn't for the development. But I'm looking at some of these guys, and I think oftentimes too, when you were a high-level recruit, sometimes you get overrated, or sometimes you don't stay as hungry. And I'm not saying that's the case with these guys, but sometimes circumstances just don't cater either. We look at the Cole Kelly kid, who's the other quarterback that Southeastern Louisiana plays, and it's interesting because Virgil has great stats. I mean, he's completing 66% of his passes. He's thrown for 3,355 yards this year, 21 touchdowns, thrown for about 280 yards a game. But Cole Kelly's thrown 90 passes.
Yeah, he's thrown it a little bit.
So he's throwing about 7 or 8 passes a game. Mm-hmm. He's 66 of 90, 785 yards, 10 touchdowns. So they're throwing for 345 a game, but they're getting it from two different guys. But then Cole Kelly has been also like their wildcat / goal line type back, and he's run the ball 87 times for 273 yards. That's been impacted by some sacks, but he scored 10 rushing touchdowns. But when you look at his high school resume, this kid, his Rivals.com profile is ridiculous. He's got offers from 40 different schools. I'm not even going to list them all for you. He was a 4-star quarterback who, coming out of high school, he was was the number 2 quarterback in the entire state of Louisiana. I mean, this guy's an absolutely
Arkansas, I think.
He went to Arkansas, but he's from Lafayette, Louisiana.
Okay.
So that's what led him back to Hammond. But they have all sorts of guys like that. I mean, I was just writing a little blurb during the commercial about Xavier Lewis. I mean, Xavier Lewis was ranked as the number 10 or 11 quarterback, depending on which cornerback, depending on which scouting service you look at, in the country. He went to LSU and played as a true freshman.
Yeah.
LSU has produced more NFL quarters than anywhere in the country. But sometimes it doesn't matter. Whatever, something happens that makes you take a different path. And I think there's always the assumption, like the Xavier Lewis kid, he got playing time at LSU as a freshman. So he's going to be the defensive player of the year in the Southland, right? No, he's never been even first team all league. He's been second team all league, but it shows you how guys can develop. Cole Kelly, number 2 recruit in the state coming out of high school. And now he's a junior and he's not even the starting quarterback.
Right.
It just shows you how much talent there really is in the FCS, but also just the way that your path can derail you and stuff like that. But I do think that the way that Southeastern Louisiana plays the 2 quarterbacks off of each other is very creative, and I think that it makes them very hard to prepare for.
No doubt. And, when one guy is going, as Chase and Virgil was this past Saturday, Cole Kelly never even saw the field in the second half of that football game. But in general, these are 2 quarterbacks who are very, very different from each other, but both good at what they do, and it's hard to be, you can't teach size, right? That's the deal. So 6'7", 260, what do you do with that? We asked Bobby Houck on Monday about that very deal and started with Chase and Virgil and asked just simply, well, what is it that he does so well?
Well, he's one of the FBS transfers, and we're familiar with Virgil because he was at Fresno State when a bunch of us were coaching in the Mountain West, so we know him well. We've seen him up close and personal. He does a nice job. Obviously, that game last weekend, he was on the money, and he runs it pretty well, but he's a good thrower, and he's a veteran player. He knows what the heck he's doing. Yeah, big kid, the Arkansas transfer. They use him a little more to run it. He's a big guy. He's tall, but he's big. He's been a little bit more of a runner. He's got 10 touchdowns on the season, leads them in touchdowns, and rushing touchdowns, that is. And, he played in the first half last week, didn't play in the second half. But he's a guy that they like to put the ball in his hands in short yardage situations and down in the goal line area.
So there you go, Bobby Houck's early assessment of the two kids playing. But like you said, interesting when if you got a guy who comes in that's primarily a running quarterback, but also can throw the ball and does throw the ball, and then another guy who, of course, is an RPO guy, can do whatever. It's 2 very distinct styles, and if you get, especially the goal line stuff, Coach Houck did reference that in particular. You get down inside the 5, you might see Kelly, 6'7", 260, come in, and who knows what he's going to do from that sort of down and distance. You assume you just give him the ball and let him try and fall forward with it, but it becomes something where you really got to be on guard for a bunch of different things that this offense throws at you.
The first team that I really saw prevalently use the Wildcat with slash type players was Villanova back in 2009 when they had Matt Caesar. And I think that people that follow the Grizz still have nightmares about Matt Caesar because he just destroyed Montana in the 2009 national championship game in the second half before going on to have a relatively successful minor league and even a cup of coffee in the show with the Chicago Cubs. But then Sam Davis says he's still in the Major League Baseball. So he's still a professional baseball player. The guy was an amazing athlete. But then Sam Houston State, they did this so prevalently where they would line up multiple guys at quarterback. And they would run the option, and they had Richard Sincere was their main trigger man, but they did it so prevalently. And now Montana State's done it so well with Travis Johnson and Troy Anderson. I think the biggest difference with Cole Kelly and all those other guys that I just named is all those other guys I just named are unbelievable athletes who can play a little bit of quarterback, and if they absolutely had to throw it, they can. But Cole Kelly can absolutely throw it, and I think that's what makes Southeastern Louisiana so hard to prepare for. Because when he comes in, you can say, okay, Wildcat, but he could also throw a 40-yard ball.
Yeah.
And or he could throw the little screen to Devontae Williams. They love that little slip screen because Williams is such a great player in space.
So they have a lot of different ways to hurt you offensively, and that's reflected in their numbers. They're averaging almost 40 points per game, throwing for almost 350 a game. So it's going to be a test for Montana just because the Grizz defense has been so aggressive, and when they've been clicking has been so hard on opponents, but they have given up chunk plays prevalently this year. As Bobby Houck always says, passing yards are empty calories, but Montana's still giving up 300 passing yards a game going against a team that throws for 350. It just could mean a lot of time on the field for the Grizz defense if they can't make plays on the ball.
Tootell Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Radio. We transfer out of the college athletics quickly and into not high school. No. The youth sport. And then we got quickly. Just want to give you a couple of little updates. The youth sports segment is brought to us by Pepsi Cola of Missoula. And Pepsi Cola brought us, a couple of months ago, I guess a month and a half ago, the updates on the Y ball. You know, my daughter's playing Y basketball. Oh, man. What a grand time that is. I mean, you can have your NBA Finals. Give me the 7-year-old running around at the YMCA. I mean, that is where the action is. But also now, how about this? The Elks Hoop Shoot is Saturday. It's December the 7th, and it's free for ages 8 to 13. Zootown 406 is teaming up with the Missoula Hellgate Elks Lodge, number 383, to bring the annual Elks Hoop Shoot where anyone can shoot in. Players may register for free online now at zootown406.com. Okay, zootown406.com. Go there. Questions and sign forms can be sent to Dave Elmore. He's the general manager and the hoop shoot director. You can also call at 240-7026 or via email at hellgateelks@gmail.com. But again, this Saturday the 7th, ages 8 to 13, the annual Hellgate Elks Hoop Shoot. So go check that thing out. Pepsi Cola of Missoula proudly supports youth sports and youth athletics. Take a quick break. Hour number 2 straight ahead. Montana State, they welcome Albany. Let's talk about that next.
Not all gift cards are created equal. The Montana Club gift card comes with more handcrafted breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites than any other local card. Home-style breakfasts, perfectly grilled Angus steaks, piled high sandwiches, expertly mixed cocktails, local craft beers, and much, much more. This year, give Montana made. Buy in-store or at montanaclub.com. Give $100 in gift cards and get a $10 gift card free. It's easy. Happy holidays from everyone at your Montana Club.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box store. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com. Thank you for making Polaris America's best-selling off-road brand. During the Polaris Great American Thank You event, financing is low at 3.99%, and rebates go as high as $3,500. Live life wide open, high-performance racing. Tackle everything from mountains to mud holes, the legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger, or elevate your adventure in the versatile Polaris General. Now is the time to get the best deals on America's best-selling off-road lineup with financing as low as 2.99%, APR for 36 months, and rebates up to $3,500 during the Polaris Great American Thank You at Church Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 8th Street in Sealy. Get to Church Polaris on Saturday, December 7th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the 7th annual snow day. This is sales is one day only, Saturday, December 7th. Rebate valid in U.S. for 12/31/19 on subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. Always wear a helmet. Never take a
Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, in collaboration with the Roxy Theater, invites you to Worldview, Cultures on Display, a series of films which highlights and celebrates the unifying power of the visual arts around the world. The fourth and final film in the series, Exit Through the Gift Shop, chronicles art by the infamous, shadowy British graffiti street artist Banksy, who has literally left his mark on cities throughout the world. This screening will be free and open to the public Monday, December 9th, 7 p.m. at the Roxy.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company. I'm Chris Hellman, an attorney at Clark Court. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Law 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKVU HD3 Stevensville and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Montana men's basketball team split a pair of games over their recent holiday weekend, winning against Coppin State at home and losing at the Pit in New Mexico 2 days later. Last week, the Grizz won a pair of home games, including 5 players in scoring in double figures. Saeed Pridgett leading the way with 19 points in a 74-62 win over Texas Southern. Then Montana made it 2 straight in Missoula thanks to a strong defensive effort and the 19-point, 12-rebound double-double from Pridgett as well in a 69-62 win over Coppin State that Friday. Freshman Derek Carter-Hollinger had the first double-double of his career with 10 points and 10 boards in that game.
That little 2-game winning streak ended, however, when Montana played for the third time in 6 days. They struggled to stay out of foul trouble and to find any efficiency offensively in a 72-63 loss in front of 10,500 in Albuquerque, New Mexico on Sunday afternoon. Pridgett poured in 25 points to go with 10 rebounds. Freshman Josh Vasquez scored a career-high 16 points, but the Grizz fell at 3-5.
The Montana State men's basketball team has been on the road for a while, but finally won its first home game in 2 weeks after blasting Colorado Christian 82-46 last Tuesday. That said, MSU fell 98-72 to a blazing Green Bay squad that shot nearly 62% from the floor. MSU is 3-5 on the season. The Lady Cats, they're 4-2 following Saturday's win at CLU. The Lady Grizz are 3-3.
Center is presented by Clark Fork Law.
Albany. It's further from Bozeman than Hammond, Louisiana is from Missoula, but not by much. Only about 200 miles. So those are road miles, too. Air miles might be just about the same.
I guess it depends on how many mountains.
Probably not. Everest clips out at 29.29.
But isn't it true that the latitude and longitude lines that you're flying on determines how fast you can fly?
Yes, because
so sometimes even if it's
of the jet stream.
In miles, you might be farther or closer, but it's faster to go certain ways.
That is correct. Seattle to Taiwan, 2 hours longer than Taiwan to Seattle.
There you go.
Yes. So you are correct about that.
As an international man of mystery, I knew you'd know that.
Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Happy to be with you on a Tuesday evening. SWX Montana across the state as well. Thanks for letting us hang out with you for a little while as we head into hour number 2, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Go there this Saturday. Biggest sale of the entire year, 1 day only. Giant sale. Giant sale. Can't even advertise the percentages on some of the discounts that you're going to get there. That's how big it is. Say this Saturday, 10 to 4 at Kurtz Polaris. If you would like to call, you can do that, 329-1899. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. And if you want to listen live on the interweb, we got that covered for you too. 1029ESPN.com. You can listen live on the Listen Live tab. The stream brought to us by Opportunity Bank. Your local bank, your opportunity. Coulter, we've talked about the Grizzlies versus the Lions of southeastern Louisiana. Now let's talk about the Great Danes of the University of Albany, who are headed for Bozeman Saturday to take on Montana State. And again, Jeff Undercuffler, who is the outstanding quarterback of the Great Danes, a redshirt freshman who's thrown 39 touchdowns this season, set a record in so doing as a freshman. So we will have him on the show later on this week. But let's hear first from Jeff Choate, talking about the University of Albany in general, what it is they do, what they do well.
That this team reflects their head coach in a lot of ways. Coach Gattuso is a defensive-minded guy, tough guy, very much a team that I think plays with a discipline that they make sure they do not beat themselves. They do not make a lot of mistakes. They do not give up a lot of explosives. They're top 25 in the country in turnover margin. They don't get penalized a lot. I think they're just a very disciplined team.
Coach Gattuso, who he's referencing there, by the way, 1982 national champion defensive end for your Penn State Nittany Lions. I mean, this is a dude who's, a lifer, as they say.
It's really hard to find real stats from way back then, but he was on the roster 1981 through 1983. I have no idea if he was a starter. I can confirm he was a letterman, though, so that means he was among the 65 guys on the travel roster.
Yep.
So, Penn State actually won back-to-back national championships, 1981, 1982. Though 1982 one was the only official one. The other one a unclaimed or shared.
There has,
national,
as of now, 2019, still never yet been an official national champion in the FBS. So, moving on. But yes, a good football team, Penn State, no doubt. And
which then affirms my point that it's all points.
Because there's never been an official national champion doesn't mean that it's point. Those are two. That's a conflict. It's
a very esoteric conversation we can get in because it might all just.
Well, if you want to go to philosophy school, we could.
But don't you have a master's?
Yeah.
International Man of Philosophy and Mystery?
That's right.
Wow. Greg Gattuso. So first of all, I often have such. I often laugh to myself when I think of Jeff Choate watching film by himself because Choate, and I've talked about this with a couple of Montana State people. So he comes to these press conferences and he's so unbelievably prepared and it's so interesting. And he was particularly jazzed up on Monday, just in terms of the X's and O's parts of it. He's talking about every stunt and stem that their D line runs, and he gave you the systematic breakdown of everything that X's and O's wise that Albany does on both sides of the ball. But he said multiple times, I'm a D-line guy. Greg Gattuso's a D-line guy. We like D-linemen. D-linemen are good. These guys' D-linemen are good.
It's funny that you say that, too, because we talk a lot, it seems to me, on this show about, the hardships, for lack of a better word, of being a head football coach, especially at the college level, and all the things that you have to deal with and manage. But also, there's plenty of stuff in there that is just so very fun for these guys. And there's a lot of things that you can love game day. I think most coaches probably do. You can love being out there in front of you can love the challenge of it and being in front of the fans. You can love being with your kids and the team aspect of it. And I'm sure that they do. But there's a lot of guys who are just straight football nerds that love to sit in the dark room and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's shading. Look at the 3 technique here. Look at the hand action on this. Look at how he's spinning out of it. And on and on and on they go, and just get to sit there and review this stuff and just get to have a blast of 12 hours by themselves watching the way different teams, different coaches, different players are going about it. And that is obviously, on one hand, it's a grind because I'm sure to some guys that's the labor of it. But to other guys, they might not, they love to be in the room seeing this stuff and seeing how it goes.
And Choate is particularly funny because when he gives you the breakdown of the other team's offense, which he's very involved in the game planning for,
yes,
he always is talking about, this guy's a problem. We're going to have a problem with this guy. This guy gives you issues.
Yeah.
And then when he's talking about the defense, you can always tell the guys that he wishes he had, that he wishes played for him. He just could not get over North Dakota's middle linebacker, Donnell Rogers, this year.
Right.
I love this guy. I love him. Comes downhill, smacks you in the face. And I just think he's so entertaining to listen to. But on that note, we talked about Southeastern Louisiana off the top. And I think I'd give the same evaluation when it comes to Albany in the fact that Jeff Undercluffer, the freshman quarterback, he reminds me a lot of Case Cookins from Northern Arizona.
Cuffler.
Under Cuffler.
There is no Albany and there is no Cluffler. There's only Albany and Under Cuffler.
Under Cuffler reminds me a lot of Case Cookins. Similar builds, about 6'5". Under Cuffler is a little bit bigger. He's about 230 pounds. So probably about 20, 25
and about,
pounds.
What, a decade younger?
Yeah, right. But he has a ton of confidence. He throws the ball down the field early and often. He's got a big arm. He spins it. He would be a good quarterback in the Big Sky Conference, certainly.
Yeah.
He would start at probably half the schools in the league, no doubt. Their running back, Paul Morfor, Jeff Choate talked about how he thinks that he's an FBS-type talent, and his numbers are indicative of that. He was an Under Armour All-American type guy coming out of high school in Maryland. I'm not really sure why he was under-recruited, except for maybe the fact that he's 5'8". He's having a huge year. He's a 1,250-yard rusher so far this year. And then Juwan Green, I mean, he would be one of the best receivers in the league. He's not quite as tall as a Samori Toure, for example, for the Grizz, but he's got better top-end speed. I mean, he's a true 4-4 guy that's going to get looks from some scouts. So, I mean, Choate breaking down these offensive skill players is a great example of what I'm talking about.
So here you go. Here's head coach Jeff Choate talking about the outstanding freshman quarterback for Albany, Jeff Undercuff.
The quarterback, Undercuffler, redshirt freshman. I mean, this guy's doing some historic things in terms of the way he's throwing the ball. Very confident, big arm, big, strong kid. Team rallies around him. You can see as you watch them throughout the course of the year how his confidence has increased. He makes less and less mistakes every week and attacks the field with more confidence.
It's really true. And when he talks, he uses the word confidence in there about 3 or 4 times. And we will have our interview with Undercuffler later on in the week with you. But in talking to this guy, first of all, the confidence is without question there. A little bit of the chip on the shoulder. I mean, this is a kid who grew up in Jersey, was a 3-sport athlete, an outstanding baseball player, outstanding state champion baseball, basketball player, and got under-recruited, according to him, under-recruited.
Right.
And when you're in a high population area like Jersey is, and the greater New York area, and I don't know where in Jersey he grew up and all that, but there's plenty of people all over the place, and you think that you can play, and you're going up. Here's what we fail to realize here, Bolter. Not realize, but we don't experience this in the state of Montana. When guys are really, really good, outstanding athletes in the state of Montana, they stand out, and we've seen plenty of players from the state of Montana go pro in various sports throughout the year. When you play baseball or football or whatever it is in a place like New Jersey, all of your classmates, not all of your classmates, but plenty of your classmates are being given scholarships to Division I schools on the regular. Like, that's not new news. That's not unique that would happen. It's not making the state radio show. It's not making, the big time waves in general happenstance. Now, sometimes 5-star kids that, the Trevor Lawrences of the world,
sure,
they get that sort of recognition. But
you become a national recruit.
That a guy's going to play at App State or at North Carolina State, or is going to play at, some of these different places under there, that's just usual. And when you're a kid who's played against all of these kids and beat all of these kids as a state champion in multiple sports, and they're going to Power 5, to FBS schools, and you have FBS schools coming to look at you, and you don't get an offer, and you sit there and go, well, what in the world is happening? And it's interesting to hear a kid like this who comes in and just slings it right out of the gate as a redshirt freshman, is setting records for his proficiency as a passer and who and what he is. And if you asked him, which we did, no surprise to him, I did it against a bunch of guys that are playing Power 5 football. Why wouldn't I be able to do it now? But with that, he also, grew a lot throughout the course of this year and is a really good player even as a young guy.
I think the other thing that's really fascinating to me about the recruiting game is when a guy is like a fringe guy. I mean, Undercuffler talked to us about getting multiple Power 5 looks and interest. And sometimes when you are talking to, this is just a straight up assumption, but say you're talking to schools like Syracuse and UMass and, maybe Villanova and, say Penn State's in there, maybe with a walk-on offer or something like that. But sometimes, especially at the quarterback spot, if you're a fringe Power 5 guy who then starts getting talked to by FBS and Power 5s, the other schools like Delaware and New Hampshire, they're just like, well, we're not going to get that. Mm-hmm. We're going to drop off that. This is exactly what happened with Casey Bauman. I know Casey Bauman has not fulfilled his potential yet at Montana State, but Casey Bauman got recruited by nobody because he was in the upper northwest corner of Washington, decided to go get himself recruited, went to a camp at Wyoming, went to a camp at Montana, went to a camp at Idaho, ended up with offers. Went to a camp at Montana State, I should say, not Montana. Ended up with offers from all those schools, and then gets invited to the Northwest Elite Camp, and he gets the Top Gun award at this camp, and now all of a sudden, oh, okay, can this kid play? Why didn't we know about this kid? But neither Washington or Washington State had any scholarship money, and he's too raw of a guy to get there. But everybody in state drop off him. Eastern Washington was never in the mix because they thought, oh, well, we don't know about this kid. Okay, now he got himself identified over here, or maybe he's going to go here. So they don't waste their recruiting resources on it. I think sometimes that's where kids fall through the cracks because you think if you're good enough to get some looks from Power Fives and FBS, you're good enough to start as a freshman at a Colonial Athletic Association school, albeit Albany is new to the CAA as of the last 6 years. But either way, you're good enough to start as a freshman. You'd think that he would at least be in the mix with schools like Richmond and Delaware and New Hampshire and the other FCS schools in that neck of the woods. But he just said that he was not really recruited by anybody. I think, but you get stuck. You know what I'm saying, though?
Totally.
You get stuck in the middle because people are like, oh, man, Syracuse is talking to him. Well, maybe Syracuse will pull the trigger. And then when Syracuse doesn't, everybody else has been off of you, and they've already filled their spots. And it's particularly prevalent at quarterback because you only recruit one or two per class, and you're probably only going to have one full ride kid.
Right.
So sometimes then you can get the diamond in the rough type kid, which it appears this kid is. Speaking of developmental players, though, the next guy we're going to talk about, Juwan Green. This kid's got 80 catches for over 1,300 yards, 16 touchdowns. Impressive numbers. He was a junior college guy, and he was pretty good last year, and he's just really burst onto the scene. I think a part of that is his chemistry with Undercup.
Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Here is Jeff Choate talking about Juwan Green, the outstanding wide receiver for Albany.
Number 4 is special, I think. And you look at a guy who's got 16 touchdown receptions. It doesn't matter if he's if he's double covered, he's not covered. Because Undercuffler has trust and confidence in this kid, and he will go get it. He is a dude. 80 receptions, 16 TDs. I don't care if you're playing Pop Warner. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And this guy is a legit, I think, NFL type of guy. He's got top end speed, runs good routes, attacks the ball in the air, and he's a major problem. He's a major problem. You give one-on-one opportunities to number 4, he's going to find him. And they're going to make you pay because they're going to take enough shots, obviously, down the field that the law of averages catches up.
Well, it's nobody that it's nothing that people don't know because Undercuffler said the exact same thing to us. He goes, if I see one-on-one, period, that's where the ball's going. We're going to number 4. That's it, and that's all. Goes to the other guy that Jeff Choate wanted to talk about or did talk about was Eli Menser, who's an outstanding defensive end for Albany. I think 14.5 sacks. Did you say? Let's hear what Jeff Choate has to say about him. Of course, he spent the most amount of time on the defensive guy.
Seems like number 12 on the edge, they do a lot to kind of get you in one-on-one situations. You dealt with a little bit of that with Obina at Sac State. Do you see any similarities, and how do you kind of mitigate a guy like him?
He's longer and I think faster than Obina is. Not as big, but you get in third and extra long, and this guy gets one-on-one with the tackle, it's going to be a problem. And so, there's some things that we've got to do. Being aware of his location is going to be important. And that creates, there's some issues in terms of, if you're going to slide the protection one way, they just move the guy on the other side and they can fix that, And so we've got to be able to be smart about how we protect. And we got to have success on first and second down. We can't get into third and extra long. That's not good for us anyway, stylistically, but in particular because of the talent of their edge rusher.
Choate, he really was fired up breaking down what Albany does on the defensive line. And I think that there's so many different ways to get pressure on a quarterback, but there's also so many ways to operate this day and age. And Bobby Houck, I've asked him this question multiple times, and he's never really embraced giving me the answer to it. There's just
weird.
Some defenses, they absolutely have to have negative plays for their defensive style to work. Especially teams that play a ton of man on the outside, because you need a negative play to knock the offense off schedule. Other defenses play a little bit more bend but don't break. They know that they can get those 2 and 3 yard tackles and set you up and get you into a 3rd and 5 without getting a negative play.
Like if you end up in 3 3rd and 4s, one of them you're not going to get, and it will end the drive.
Right, and
in some defenses.
And I've asked Coach Houck this multiple times, like, how much does this defense rely on negative plays? And he always says, well, every defense wants to get negative plays, but that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is how important is it to the actual full breadth of your defensive scheme? You look at Southeastern Louisiana and you look at Albany, these two teams absolutely have to have it. Albany has 92 tackles for loss this year. That would lead the Big Sky Conference. To put that in perspective, Montana State has 90. I think about how good Montana State's front four is.
Right.
Montana has something like in the high 60s. And that's with guys that get a ton of tackles for loss like Jace Lewis and Dante Olson. I mean, a pretty good and to above average number in college football this many games is in the high 60s or low 70s. So 92 is a ton. Southeastern Louisiana has 104. I even said that to Coach Hauken. He even actually took the bait for the first time and said, man, that's a lot of tackles for loss. But the way that so then you get into even the more of the detail. How do you do it? Are you a team that brings pressure all the time like Montana or like North Dakota? Or you're running a blitz, even if it's not on a passing down, you're running a run stunt. You're flying to the football. It's a back motion predicated stunt. So the back goes to the right. Both Dante Olson and Jace Lewis are splitzing to that side. There's no read. There's no gap responsibility. Get them.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Choate said this team blitzes less than any team that they've played so far this year in 12 games. And he also talked about, okay, so then if you don't blitz, how do you get 92 tackles? And he talked about how these guys, they stunt, they shift. He always talks about post-snap movement. He talked about that prevalently in the press conference leading up to the Grizz game. And I saw a lot of feedback on social media of people mocking him, like, what is post-snap movement? Isn't that just getting to the ball? What he means is when the ball snapped, you're not in the same gap as you were when the ball wasn't snapped. So you're jumping gaps. That's what these guys do. Their D-line is they're very atypical in size. Eli Mentzer, who he's talking about right there, he's only 6'2", 229 pounds. So he's not a giant guy, but he's super, super long and super, super fast. So he's trying to get to the outside, get around the corner. He doesn't have that many gap responsibilities. He's going to make huge splash plays. All his tackles are solo tackles or tackles for loss. That's what they are. And it's the same thing. Their interior defensive linemen are both less than 6 feet tall, but they just jump gaps one way or the other. People will remember the infamous defense that Montana was running for 2 years under Jason Seymour, and that's kind of what they wanted it to be. Jump a gap, make a play,
stunt, twist, get up the field,
get negative plays. It leaves you vulnerable to big plays. But when Choate was really breaking it down, what he wasn't saying was that these guys jump gaps all the time. What's that mean? It means they're not gap sound. What does Montana State do? Gap scheme. They try to get you out of your gap. So if you're going to jump to another gap, this is exactly what happened in the Grizz game. I rewatched the game the other night. Montana, they bring so much pressure all over the place. And Montana State had so many different options in the game plan where when they saw a little bit of a shade, a little bit of a shift, they saw a little bit of a tendency, boom, hit them with a counter, 8-yard gain.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. All of a sudden you got second level, you got 2 guards on Dante Olson, and as spectacular of a player as he is, he's not getting through 660 pounds of man. He knows
right.
And so you can just cut off the double team, and that's the game within the game. And so I wonder, Albany lives and dies off of negative plays, jumping gaps, post-snap movement. Montana State loves playing teams like that, especially if they can get you out of your gap. So in terms of the matchup within the matchup, that could be something where Montana State, I mean, they already have all year long, but that could be somewhere where they could really exploit all.
Well, and the other thing, too, is, you take a guy like Mentzer, who is obviously a get after the quarterback, pass rushing, get into the backfield type of guy. There's just not all of that much to be had when you play Montana State. Like you,
right.
And to then only be 230 pounds.
Right. Going against Mitch Brown.
Good luck.
Good luck.
And so, you can get around him, but if you get around him the wrong side, it doesn't even matter.
Well, and most of the time, the ball's gone. Because they don't really give Tucker Rovick 7-step drops.
Right.
I mean, it's take the snap, throw it.
But, as a running back, you just read which side, 5 yards to the right or 5 yards to the left, whatever it needed to be to get around Mitch Brott, takes up some area. And then you just go the other way, and that's it. That's all. I mean, it sounds simple, obviously, to say. It's not simple like that. But you're right. I mean, that scheme, that style, and frankly, the personnel, if you hit it right, going to work well for Montana State. It seems like. That said, Albany, they finished 25th in the nation according to the Stats FCS Top 25. They're an 8-4 team.
9-4 now.
9-4 after the win.
Then they won 8 out of 10 because they started 1-2. So they're hot.
They lost to Central Michigan in the FBS.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 of their 3 other losses to other conference teams, other FCS teams, one was, I think, to Monmouth in overtime by 3.
Yep.
Who was a 10-win team and a top 10 team in the nation.
11-win team after
last week. And then their other loss, I forget to who it was, but was also a 3-point loss. So they're literally 6 points away from being only a 2-loss team with one of those, and again, okay, look, man, winning close games, that's what makes a team, really good or not. But with all that said, the matchups are what they are. We'll talk more about those. This is a really good team that, again, they just had their very first ever FCS playoff win. First ever, okay? There's not a lot of history here with the Albany Great Day. But in the event that they go ahead and they get, this team has been rolling the way they have, and they have some outstanding talent on this team as they do. This is a team that I think is better than what we would have guessed. So,
I mean, they've played so many close games. They beat William and Mary by a touchdown. They lost to Richmond by a field goal. They beat Rhode Island by a touchdown. They beat Delaware by 4 points. They beat New Hampshire by a touchdown. They beat Stony Brook by 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they've been in close games on both sides. I cut that soundbite a little bit short, but Choate went into that. And I think that's another element that's so interesting about college football. I always talk about how the schemes that defensive and offensive coordinators are enacting are built more than any other factor to make kids make mistakes.
Yeah.
And Choate said, you want to know how I know this team is well coached? Because they're in the top 25 in the country in third down efficiency on both sides of the football. The top 25 least penalized teams in the country. They do all the things that you don't beat themselves. And Choate said, so often in college football, it's not even necessarily about winning the game. It's about not losing the game and let the other team lose the game.
Right, let them make mistakes.
And that's what Albany seems to have done so well, especially down the stretch.
Speaking of letting the other team lose the game, I don't know why it made me so happy, but for Auburn to run out their regular offense on a punting down with a minute to go.
Alabama.
No, Auburn.
Right.
Their regular offers to get Saban confused, and Saban actually made the mistake that lost. I mean, whether they were going to win or not, but ultimately, it's too good to be true. Too good to be true. I'm not going to get into this with you right now. Alabama out of the play. Okay? That's all I'm saying. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
No freak out like a college football freak out.
A fact.
Did you listen to Paul Feinbaum this week?
Oh, yeah.
The Alabama dynasty is over. What are you talking about, bro?
I listened to him for 15 minutes today on Stephen A. And, look, who am I to ask? Who am I to take on Feinbaum on SEC stuff?
I mean, they might be out of the playoff this year. They still won 5 national championships in the last 10 or 11 years.
Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hey, we've done a lot of football. Basketball is in season 2, though, people. Let's see about the Cats and the Grizz, where they're at right now, where they're heading, and what's going on with them. We'll give you an update right after this. Coulter, the holiday season, man. People traveling, people driving around, flying around, family coming in, family going out. Maybe you need an event space. Maybe you need to get away. Wingate by Wyndham, they got beds, they got breakfast, they got a pool with slides for the kids. They got great rates that don't change for business people traveling around the city of Missoula. If you are a traveler, you have family, whatever it is, you take them out to the Wingate. That's where they need to set them up. Right?
Need somewhere to stay for your relatives for Christmas or upcoming Grizz playoff game or games. We'll see. Great place. Easy access to the freeway, which I think you cannot understate in the city of Missoula. It's on Airport Boulevard. That does not mean you're out in some outpost out there. You just get on the freeway, bam, you can get Reserve Street, you can get Orange Street, you can get Van Buren. Easy access to downtown, to campus area, all the places you need to go in Missoula. So if you got friends or family coming into town for any occasion this month or at any time next year, go check out the Wingate by Wyndham. Also, like you mentioned, Gus, great travel rates, great business rates. They do not jack up their business prices anytime during the year. Their business and corporate travel rates stay the same. If you need a place for a meeting for 2 or 200, they got you covered as well. Great real breakfast, not just the cereal. They got real full breakfast. So let them Wingate by Wyndham make you feel at home even when you're not.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tire. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes, shocks, wheels, and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at because all those services affect things like we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at LesSchwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing. 1950.
On Russell, across from the fairground.
Not all gift cards are created equal. The Montana Club gift card comes with more handcrafted breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites than any other local card. Home-style breakfasts, perfectly grilled Angus steaks, piled high sandwiches, expertly mixed cocktails, local craft beers, and much, much more. This year, give Montana made. Buy in-store or at montanaclub.com. Give $100 in gift cards and get a $10 gift card free. It's easy. Happy holidays from everyone at your Montana Club.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on your head.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of gas idling every single day. Idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and restarting. So next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds.
In a 69-62 win over Coppin State. Freshman Derek Carter Hollinger, he's been pretty good. He's going to be very good. He had his first career double-double against Coppin State, 10 and 10.
The Grizz could not find any flow on Sunday, however, playing in the pit in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in front of a crowd of 10,500. Grizz shot below 40%. They committed more fouls than they made field goals, and they lost 72-63. Bridget had 25 points and 10 rebounds. Freshman Josh Vasquez scored a career-high 16 points, but the Grizz fell at 3-5.
The Montana State men's team won their first home game in quite a while, a couple of weeks. They've been on the road. They beat Colorado Christian 82-46 last Tuesday, but they then fell 98-72 to an outstanding Green Bay squad that shot 62% from the floor. MSU is 5-3 on the season. The women's team from Montana State is 4-2 after they beat Seattle U. The Lady Grizz 3-3 after beating Cal State Fullerton. Goodness gracious. Basketball and football, you kidding me, Coulter? It's too good to be true.
It is. I feel completely out of sorts with the Big Sky Conference and hoops right now because Montana and Weber State have the ability to get better games than anybody else in the league because they have traditionally been good. They can't get the power conference teams to come to Missoula or Ogden, but they can get them to play them. Like Montana State, until they continue to ascend, like Brian Fish did a pretty good job of getting money games because of his connections within coaching circles, but it's not that advantageous for Power 5 teams to play teams like the Cats when the Cats have had RPIs in the 280s in recent years.
Right, because even when you beat them, it actually can even hurt your standing.
Right, and sometimes, schools like the Power 5s want to have some really early season games where they play, an Idaho State or whatever as a warm-up game, and they can blow them out by 40 and not really have to worry about losing. Regardless, it's been interesting because the Grizz and Weber State have played reputable opponents thus far, and neither team has just been very good. And Syed Pridgett has been good for the Grizz, and Jarek Harding has been good for Weber State. But other than that, the team. It's like I was telling you after the press conference on Monday when we were walking out of the Adams Center, we were kind of glancing in and watching the team practice. There's so many different ways to be good and so many different ways to be bad at basketball.
Right.
And Montana, I shouldn't say that they're bad. They just don't know how to play together yet. And so there's stretches of games that are just brutal to watch. They just look terrible.
Yeah.
It's not because, and it's even more frustrating than if they were just flat bad. Like there's been some, like Brian Fish's first year at Montana State, the Cats were just flat bad. They just had guys that were just straight up not D1 players. But that's actually sort of fun to watch sometimes because you're like when Blake Brumwell is taking a charge, like, man, this guy, like, how's he even hanging in this game? He's like a City League player. How is he even in this game? I can say that because Blake's on my City League. but you know what I'm saying? It's actually even more maddening to watch when you have guys like the Grizz have specifically, like Derek Carter-Hollander, who you mentioned in the Sports Center, and Josh Vasquez and Kyle Owens. These guys are good players. They're very, very talented. They just don't know how to play together, and they don't know how to play under the system that Coach DeCure wants. And I don't think that they've truly understood how to respond to Coach DeCure either. It's going to be a fascinating evolution and growing process, especially if Travis DeCure stays at Montana, to see this class through. Because, I mean, think of how good the senior class was last year. But think about those guys when they were freshmen and sophomores. Like, they were going through it. I mean, Montana went 16-16 and was a pretty mediocre team the first year that Ahmad Rory was eligible, when Jamara Coe was still sitting out, when Bobby Moorhead was going through his sophomore slump. Michael Ogine went from freshman phenom to a guy that was just, where do I fit in with a ball-dominant guard Walter Wright, a ball-dominant guard Ahmad Rory?
And Walter Wright was trying to understand what his role was going to be and never really did.
I mean, he went from like the Big Sky Newcomer of the Year then to having to be the second guard behind a Pac-12 guy in Ahmad Rory. It was just such a weird deal. But also those guys, even as close as they got and as well as they learned how to respond to Coach DeCure, it was a process. It was a process for them to get there. And that's kind of what I'm seeing out of the Grizz right now. They show flashes. I mean, Derek Carter-Hollander was the best player on the court for a few moments against Stanford. And he had that run against Stanford where he made like 5 buckets in a row. He had 12 points at halftime. They're in the game. But then he kind of just disappears, and I don't even think it's because of him. I think sometimes these guys, they don't really know the ebbs and flows of a game. How do you find your shot? Where are you at within the flow of the fabric of the team? It's so hard to learn that, especially when you're like those guys. I mean, those guys are less than a year removed from making runs at state championships and being the man on their high school teams.
Right.
And it's going to be an obstacle that Montana's going to go through compared to a lot of other Big Sky schools, because they can get guys that are good enough to play right away, who also they get them to come here under the premise that they probably are going to play right away, but then getting all those guys who are playing right away to play with each other and learn how to play within the fabric of a team, that's really a difficult challenge. And so I've just been sort of out of sorts with the way that the Big Sky has gone so far, because like we mentioned in the first hour, Sac State started off undefeated. Who saw that coming? They lost Marcus Graves. You think they go through a rebuilding, but instead with Josh Patton,
they beat Fullerton and Riverside and everybody,
which are good wins. You know, when you're beating Big West schools at the Big Sky, those are like opponents. That's preparing you for conference play. Those are good wins. And Idaho State has been way better than advertised. Now on the other side, Idaho has lost to 3 straight Division II schools.
Yeah,
the Grizz lost to Montana Tech. Weaver State lost to Utah State by 60. It's just been a strange year to analyze, and I think that all the narrative around the league is by and large the same. These teams just got to analyze themselves internally, not externally, and get ready for conference play.
Well, it's a big night on Thursday in the state of Montana as the Montana State Bobcats welcome South Dakota State. By the way, the Lady Cats hosting before that. It's a doubleheader there in Brick Breeden. Gonzaga coming to Bozeman on Thursday to play the Lady Cats. And then the men play, as I mentioned, South Dakota State, who the Jackrabbits are a very good basketball program in the Summit League. And then the Grizzlies, they play North Dakota, formerly of the Big Sky Conference, that will be here. And this is the last home game on Thursday for the Grizzlies in non-conference play. Crazy. And it's big because they're 3-5 after losing that Montana Tech game. They played New Mexico really close. We had a lead in the second half against the Lobos at the Pit in New Mexico, which is an incredible venue, one of the legendary places to play college basketball in the United States. But they end up, falling in that game in a close competitive game. But now they play North Dakota. Then they go on the road to Oregon and Omaha. Omaha, a very good basketball team and place to play. And even though they're not a high major conference, it's a really good basketball program there, and of course playing on the road, no doubt. And so
I mean, they draw really well. Omaha plays a really fun style too. They get up and down. Brian Fish spent so much of his career in Omaha,
right,
both at that Creighton. I mean, 12 total years in his career. So the Cats have played Omaha for 5 years in a row. Pretty familiar with the Omaha program, but that'll be a fun game because I actually think that Omaha is so much less about preparation than it is about pace, and that actually might be great for the Grizz young players. But this has been a hard season so I think for everybody around Missoula to get into, because they're the 2-time reigning Big Sky champs, but they have so many new faces, not just with the departing seniors, but with all the guys that left the program too. And then you talk about the dichotomy of their schedule, all the sort of games that you'd want to go see: New Mexico and Arkansas and Washington and Oregon, Stanford. They're on the road, obviously.
Sure.
And then I don't think that there's much knowledge whatsoever about Texas State, Oppen State, and Montana.
Well, and that's why this game Thursday against North Dakota is maybe going to be the
Friday for the Grizz, Thursday for the Cats.
Oh, is it Friday?
Friday night for the Grizz.
We'll confirm. It is Friday night. Excuse me, for Montana.
The Cats are playing the doubleheader
on Thursday,
night,
and the Montana Grizzlies on Friday. But Saeed Pridgett has been doing what he does: 18 points and 8 rebounds a game. No matter who. I mean, he had 25 in New Mexico on over the weekend. And Kendall Manuel is also starting to get back into the flow. He was struggling. I honestly think, man, this multiple line thing on the court, we saw this at the conference championship last year where they added an extra line.
It messed up the ladies so bad.
Yes, and I think that you're seeing some of this because now the men's three-pointer has been moved back, and you got the women's, and in some cases you got even a high school line on there. And so I've seen a multiple course with 3 different three-point lines. And look, I don't know. I just feel like it's something that shooters are trying to get used to figure out not just where they need to be, but the sort of the visual signifier when it's just one line is pretty easy to do. Now I understand if you're on the men's team, it's the furthest line. You don't have to figure it out within that. But it's kind of hard to get a feel for that. I think you'll see. You will have seen some tougher shooting percentages, especially for guys that are three-point shooters earlier in the season. I think they work into that over time. But Kendall Manuel is averaging 12 points. Other than that, nobody's averaging more than 7 points a game for the Grizzlies. And they're struggling. They're struggling at times more than they're struggling in general. And I think you made a good point, Coulter. You said starting the game, coming out of halftime, coming out of timeouts, Montana has looked really, really good. But when a game starts to get into a flow and all of a sudden it's just playing basketball, it can fall apart. And this team can look really stuck on offense and really confused on defense until they are able to get reset and sort of reoriented by their coaches in terms of what they need to be doing and where they need to be doing, because it's just not natural for them. And, this is a super young team, as you said. We'll see how they progress. For Montana State, a bunch of new names there, but Harold Frey doing what he does, 15 points a game, and he's averaging Harold Frey, are you ready for this, is leading the team in rebounding.
I believe it.
5.9 rebounds a game, just remarkable for their point guard. But Jabril Bello has been an absolute revelation, 5 boards and 12 points a game from him. And then Amin Adamu, as well as Layden Ricketts, are both over 8 points a game. So they're spreading it out, and they've had a little bit of consistency, I guess I'd say, in the way that they've been playing at Montana State. Those guys coming in. And again, it's a bunch of new faces, but not a ton of youth at Montana State. I mean, they're talking about transfer guys that are redshirt sophomores, some juniors and things like that, along with some young players as well. But again, the key to that whole thing, Harold Frey, when you have the definitive guy as the point guard, whereas Josh Vasquez, Timmy Falls, even Saeed Pridgett sort of been mixing it in terms of the ball handling responsibilities. There isn't a definitive guy in that respect for Montana. I think that's been part of what they're trying to work.
What is your role? How do you define your role? That's going to be a work in progress for both these teams. But ironically, I think that the Cats just have much better role definition right now, because it's not as if Montana doesn't know who their go-to guy is. They do. It's Saeed Pridgett, but everybody around him is sort of in flux. They need to get Jared Samuelson back into a high-minute role, because then that will help. I think that Derek Carter-Hollinger could be a really good first off the bench guy, as a guy you can throw the ball to right away, right when he gets in the game, let him go to work on the post, but then he doesn't have to play these extended stretches where he gets into foul trouble. So if Samuelson can get back, that'll help Montana for sure. And the Montana State side of things, I just think that they understand their roles a little bit better just because they have a little bit more defined positions. I mean, Montana doesn't really have a true big with Samuelson out, whereas Montana State, they do have Bello, they do have Kevin Kirby, so they have guys where you know exactly what their role is on the team, and their minutes are a little bit more defined. They have a little bit more depth right now. It's going to be a work in progress, though, going forward.
We'll take a break. Come back. On the other side, Ron Rivera fired today. Where are these coaches going to? How about that? 9 seasons in Carolina. No Moss for Riverboat Ron. We'll talk about that, who's replacing him, and a little bit of NFL stuff right after this. Hey, it's winter. You know what that means? You should get your car detailed. That's right. I said it, detailed from Shine Auto Detailing. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. December is winter prep month. The road salts and sands, they wreak havoc on the paint and finish of your ride. Protect your car or truck from the harsh winter elements by having a premium exterior detail, which includes a ceramic coating final finish. When spring comes around, simply drive your car through the wash and it'll look like, not just that it's been clean, but it's been freshly waxed thanks to that ceramic finish. If you care about your ride, protect it from winter. And check this out. This week only, save $50, $50. Call to schedule. Just search Auto Detailing in Missoula on Google and pick the one with over 100 5-star reviews. You can also schedule online, shineautodetailing.net. That's shineautodetailing.net. Make your appointment today.
There's a saying, opportunity never knocks twice. When you're ready to take advantage of your next opportunity, look to your local bank. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Opportunity Bank offers options for mortgage loans, small business loans, equipment financing, agriculture, and more. Our experienced team can provide solutions to help you welcome your next big opportunity. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at your local Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box store. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit D6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Gifts from Florence Coffee Company are as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, buy a $20 gift card and receive one $5 gift card free. 2, pick up a gift bag complete with mug, coffee, and a $10 gift card, all for only $25. 3, choose from a selection of winter travel mugs. 5% of all gift card sales go to the Montana Food Bank. Go to any Florence Coffee location or go to florencecoffeeco.com.
If you're looking for the perfect Christmas gift, think spicy. 'Tis the season for seasoning with gift packs from Alpine Touch. The 4-spice pack includes 4 Big Mountain flavors for just $19.99. Go to alpinetouch.com right now for gifts sure to keep mouths watering year-round. And if you plug in the code ESPN at checkout, you'll get a free bag of Alpine Touch sunflower seeds. From gift packs to gift cards to the Grand Slam package, Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Go to alpinetouch.com right now to order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, in collaboration with the Roxy Theater, invite you to Worldview, Cultures on Display, a series of films which highlights and celebrates the unifying power of the visual arts around the world. The 4th and final film in the series, Exit Through the Gift Shop, chronicles art by the infamous, shadowy British graffiti street artist Banksy, who has literally left his mark on cities throughout the world. This screening will be free and open to the public Monday, December 9th, 7 p.m. at the Roxy.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of Italy every single day. Idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and restarting. The next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, getting coffee, or picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
Tootell.
Carolina Panthers and dinner plans. It is that time of day. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hi. How are you out there? Hope you're well. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Drop by Kurtz on Saturday. That's this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And, hey, if you're going to the game, maybe even go a little earlier. They'll probably let you in. I heard the good word. They're going to let you in, okay, even before the 10 a.m. They got free lunch for you, hot chocolate, coffee, whatever you need. You get yourself in there, and you get the best sale of the entire year, one day only, this Saturday at Kurtz Polaris in Missoula. If you would like to check out the show on your own time, we encourage that. It's called a podcast. We put it for you there. Wherever you get your podcast, you search Tootell and Nuanez. You listen to us whenever you want it, wherever you want it. There, thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Colter, Ron Rivera fired today. Fired on a Tuesday in week 13. How about that? They lost. The Carolina Panthers did to the now 2-win Washington Redskins in Carolina. Not a great look. They have a losing record. They're basically out of the playoffs in a division that, there's one really good team, but then nobody really jumped up. If ever you were going to be a wild card team in the NFC, like this would be the year. We talked about this the other day, but between Vikings, Packers, Seahawks, Niners, you've got your two wild card teams there, but there's not even a third. Like the closest next team would be the Rams right now in terms of a team that would be there for, the wild card. But there's plenty of space at the table. Nobody from the NFC East is going to the playoffs. Nobody,
but somebody's gonna. That's
that's
the part that's so frustrating.
But there's no challenger for a wild card.
The Vikings are so much better than those teams in the NFC East, and the Vikings are going to be playing on the road in the first round of the playoffs. And Dallas is probably going to have a bye and a home,
right?
Despite trying to lose.
Nonetheless,
how about the situation in
the
Dallas?
Panthers should be better, shouldn't they?
Well, I mean, you built your entire franchise on this guy, and he's out. I mean, when Cam Newton's out, you can say whatever you want about Cam Newton. Kyle Allen is not Cam Newton. That's why I think Ron Rivera got a raw deal, man. Like, of course the Panthers aren't as good without Cam Newton.
Yeah. He's been on the hot seat, though, a couple of times before this. I think this loss, though, obviously was the straw.
The NFL's just so crazy. They won 15 games recently with him as their head coach.
Yeah, 4 years. Yes. Yeah. Perry Fewell has been named the interim head coach. Offensive coordinator Norv Turner will be the special assistant to the head coach. And Scott Turner will serve as the OC for the remainder of the season while a coaching search is done. What did you want to say something about the Cowboys? Chris Peterson being their new head coach?
No, I don't. Well, the Cowboys get such a nauseating amount of media coverage, but I also think that Jerry Jones uses the media. Jerry Jones went to the players and said that he basically, this was the headline. Jerry Jones tells players that Jason Garrett is close to getting fired. So in other words, he's putting it in the media that, do you guys want to win for this guy and keep him around? He's basically saying, win for this guy and keep him around, or don't. He's leaving it in the players' hands. Like, if they don't rally and win for this guy, they are telling their owner, we want a new coach. I find it a fascinating.
I think it's insane.
It's the Cowboys.
Right. What else do we expect? Let me ask you this, okay, Colter? I've just confirmed with my wife that I will not be cooking dinner. I will be ordering.
Nice. Get some za?
I'm trying to decide, man. So you come off this food bender for the last 4 days. You know what I mean? And I've been good the last couple of days. You know what I mean? Trying to do the right things, make good choices. You know what I mean? But I'm just wondering if I could wrap a burger inside of a pizza, if that might be the way to go. Is there any place that sells that, maybe inside of a burrito? Like, just do the triple, just sell it on down the river tonight.
Burritos are good.
I totally.
I mean, if you put the right stuff in there, they're not nearly as.
Hey, pizza's not bad. What? Cheeseburgers get a bad rap, man.
All about how many?
Quite a lot. My hope. It's my expectation.
What's Kai want? That's going to just be the thing that really helps out.
You know what he wants, whatever he can see. bananas, onions, cement, garbage, all of it. Bring him something up. Get him something good. Boys and girls, have a wonderful Tuesday evening. We appreciate each and every one of you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow. Tootell Nuanez, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana.
You know what's at stake after a car accident? Not only will you have to deal with pushy insurance companies, auto repair shops, endless doctor's appointments, and dozens of unforeseen problems, but also your normal day-to-day life. I'm Coulter here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys, and she knows how hard this can be.
That's right. And with all of that, it can seem tempting to take the quick settlement that the insurance company is offering. But I can tell you from experience that it is